Yeah, and I think since he's come back to the club, going to the 4 at the back, the 2 in midfield, and then obviously a number 10 dropping in off a striker and the 2 wide players, that it has felt a lot more like Manchester United. In fact, it has felt very much like Manchester United. We know it's not quite at the level that will win a league, but what you can see are the patterns of something that looks like the football club should be playing. And for the first 5 months of the season, that wasn't the case. It was desperate out here. And did the interview with Sky Sports News before the game with Dan Carn, and we talked about, I think I did 6 games here or 5 games here in December and January, and we were doing interviews before the game talking about, Manchester United had an opportunity to go into the Champions League places, but they never seemed to take it, and it was really desperate around that time, and the football was hard to watch because it didn't represent what you think should exist here. And that second half was very much what you would see at Old Trafford. A Manchester United team who looked very dangerous going forward, are willing to go punch for punch. They conceded some chances and goals actually at the other end of the pitch, but always looked the more likely to score. Missed, Brian Mbeumo missed, I think, 4 himself. So, yeah, very much, I think, in the traditions of United, and I think that's why Michael Carrick will get the job. Obviously, the results, getting into the Champions League, but also, I think, just returning the club to a style which looks something like, and that's not always been the case. That's not easy. They will have to get better in a lot of areas, but there's been massive improvement in this last 4 months, and Michael Carrick's done an exceptional job. The players have responded to it. They've got themselves into a comfortable position in 3rd place, which, would have been unthinkable. Yeah, the only thing that's going to be able to help him with that is the increase in numbers and increase in quality in the players in the squad. Because there's no doubt that this squad will come under great stress playing 3 times a week. We know there are some players out there who are injury prone, some players out there who would fatigue more, and it's just inevitable. You've seen what City and Arsenal have done in this last 3 or 4 years. That said that I thought that Manchester United should go and get the best manager that they possibly can in the world. But what you can't deny over the last few weeks and months is that the call for Michael Carrick to be manager has been getting louder and louder, and it's difficult to go against it when it doesn't seem that there is an obvious sort of what will be candidate out there that you can just lift off the shelf and put in. So yeah, we're going to see Michael Carrick definitely at the start of next season, but the job starts really for him then. He's done a very, very good job as a sort of interim manager, caretaker, whatever you would call it. But he's going to start being sort of judged, I would imagine, at the start of next season. But he needs to get 4 or 5 players in. That means the club need to support him in getting the 4 or 5 players in that he needs.
2 of the holes that he will have to fill. Casemiro, we already knew this was going to be his last season, and he did confirm in his speech at the end here today that Tyrell Malacia is leaving. Now, obviously he, as things stand, would only be a cover player for Luke Shaw, but bearing in mind his history of injuries, even though he's had a great year for appearances this season with the extra stresses and strains of more games next season, is that an area where they will also need to bring in somebody ready-made?
They definitely need backup at full-back. Both sides, I would say. In an ideal world, you bring 3 defenders in an ideal world. And one of those defenders might be... When I think of the likes of, say, I'm trying to think in Capie at Arsenal, who plays left-back and left centre-back, and I think Ben White's done that as well, and I think Mosquera's done that, where they played... they almost need one of them that can play in 2 positions, that can support. Then they need another top where he looks like he put some weight on, he was immobile. Jamie Carragher's famous comment in that Liverpool game out here, and it was a harsh comment, but what we were seeing, I mean, he was subbed after 30 odd minutes. It was a real struggle for him, and he looked really heavy. He came back, was it last season, just completely different. His physicality was different. He'd lost weight, he was more sort of energetic, and his last 2 years has been a really good performer for United, one of the standout performers, and in this last 6 months he's been exceptional in terms of getting Manchester United into the Champions League. His heading and his aerial ability in both boxes will be very difficult to replace. And you watch him now and you think, what would he have been like 10 years ago at Madrid? I wasn't watching Madrid 10 years ago week in, week out. I was watching them obviously in the Champions League, and you knew he was a top player, one of the very best. But he must have been exceptional 10 years ago. What they do now need is Manchester United is a 25, 26-year-old version of Casemiro. But the problem is that costs you 100 million quid nowadays. You're talking about a Declan Rice and a Casado, that type of player. So where that player comes from, Elliot Anderson, we've seen it here today, maybe we'll analyse him shortly. But overall, Casemiro's cost the club about £140 million. He was signed in a panic after a Brentford defeat away from home with Antony. And they overpaid on salary. The story goes that, you know, he couldn't believe the package that was being offered to him, and Real Madrid presented it to him as if to say, we can't hold you back. So it tells you that it's a moment in time, and Manchester United, I don't think today, in their current format and sort of leadership, would sign Casemiro. As you know, they won't go and do another deal like that. But that's to take nothing away from Casemiro, because I think he's performed in the last 12 to 18 months very, very well. I say there was a period in the middle of his contract where he struggled, and they will miss him. They'll miss him from a personality and character perspective, and a physicality and an aerial presence. And he's good on the ball as well, and he's developed a really good combination and partnership with Kobbie Mainoo. So they need to find a couple of players in there, one standout player, but another one who can play in there if Mainoo or whoever they sign isn't available. You need at least 3 in there, maybe 4. So, yeah, it's a big send-off for him. He's become a fan's favourite. But I've still got in the back of my mind a reminder of the panic in which they signed him. You know, Manchester United, I think, lost to Brentford. They lost at home the first game of the season to someone and then lost away at Brentford. And it was just panic stations before a Monday night football against Liverpool, where they spent 150 million on Antony and Casemiro. And no one could believe it at the time and thought it was madness. Casemiro, in the end, I think has brought some value. Antony's obviously gone. But Casemiro's brought some value just because of he's like a captain, really. You don't find very many players like that. But it still smacks of a time that was very different. And Manchester United need a younger version of him if they can find that player out there, which is difficult.
It is difficult, but would they perhaps look to the Premier League? I mean, you've mentioned Elliot Anderson already. I'll ask you what you thought about seeing him. But are you looking at his type, or an Adam Wharton maybe, who's had a little bit of European experience as well? Somebody from already within the division who can develop?
If you look at United's recruitment last summer, they did sign Šeško and Lamens that came from outside, but younger players who've got some growth. But their big signings were 2 players who are Premier League ready, you know, Mbeumo and Cunha, and they've had difficult times at moments this season, Cunha and Mbeumo, but I've never thought for 1 second when I watch them they don't belong in a red shirt. They do belong in a red shirt because they keep going. They've got that fight and that persistence. And Manchester United forwards have to work hard. They have to look like they're hungry to get on the ball. They have to look like they're going to run forward, like they want to score. And they're persistent and they keep going. And they've got good characters, those 2. And I think there's better to come from them as they settle into the second season. So Manchester United, I think, do need to look at players that are either very, very young and got a hunger to sort of grow, or Premier League ready players. And Elliot Anderson is that. What I like about Anderson is the fact that he looks forward, he contributes. I mean, you've seen the 2 assists that he's put in, the 2 crosses for the goals were exceptional. I've got a soft spot for him because I watched him for Bristol Rovers play against Salford a number of years ago when he was on loan. And he was playing in a wide area at that point, which he did for Newcastle sometimes, which means that when he goes back into central midfield, he can accept the ball on the half turn. He knows where he is. He's got an eye for looking forward, and I see too many, I mentioned it during the game, crabs playing central midfield. Can't have too many people who play 5-yard passes back and sideways. You might as well put a full-back in there if you're going to do that. You need to put players in there who are going to look forward and punch passes through the lines and have got their head up and can switch play, and Elliot Anderson can do that. He can take set pieces. So for me, he would be an outstanding sort of what would be candidate to come here, but you believe what you hear, Manchester City also want him. So if it's a straight fight between the 2 Manchester clubs, it'll be interesting to see who he chooses. Yeah, I mean, at the moment, Manchester City are ahead of Manchester United. They've got Pep Guardiola. This season is going to be a successful season for Manchester City, irrespective of whether they win the league or not, because they've won 2 domestic cup competitions. And I would class that as a success, not by the standards that Pep Guardiola has set, but when you're transitioning a team as he is, from a team that won the treble and that's got a little bit old to a new team that's younger, to keep on for the other players that won them, not for myself. But for the other players that won them in the team, I just didn't care about them at all. And I was named in the PFA Team of the Year quite a lot, and it meant nothing to me at all, honestly. It really didn't. I genuinely just wanted to win football games and trophies for the club. But Cristiano Ronaldo did want to win individual trophies. There were lads in the team who it was important to them to get recognition for their work. And so maybe as I get to sort of a lot older in life and I look upon sort of, people do look back upon individual achievements, and they do look back upon the fact that you've achieved something a little bit different. And then getting level with Kevin De Bruyne and Thierry Henry is something that bit different. And he could go ahead of them next week in the game against Brighton. We don't know yet. But he's been an exceptional performer. I've said this, unfortunately, for Manchester United for 2, 3, 4 years. He's the only player that I've seen signed for biggish money that I've seen go on and do sort of what will be that over the last 10 to 12 years. Now, I have to say, and this was 3 or 4 years ago, I think young players don't respond off that type of thing. They want that sort of, yeah, you can have a go at them, by the way, you should have a go at them, but not in a moany, whingy way. That seems to have gone from his game now. And what you can never doubt with Bruno Fernandes is he cares. And he's always cared, and he's always been passionate. So it's important that Manchester United keep him, by the way. He's got a buyout clause in his contract, and I think that he'll be looking at the club and speaking to Michael Carrick and saying, right, come on, who are you signing? Who are you going to sign that's going to take me to a point whereby I'm staying here? I believe in this club. I believed in this club last summer when not many people at that time did believe in it, when Manchester United had just been beaten by Tottenham in the Europa League and finished 15th in the league, which is unforgivable. He stayed and could have easily jumped ship, and he didn't do. And that will put him in a really good position with the United fans, because they demand loyalty, they want loyalty, and he's given them that. But now I think it's time for the club to, again, Manchester United need to win a football match, obviously, because there are fans going paying to watch the game, and will spend a lot of money to get to Brighton. But if he can get an assist next week, he should try and do it. I mean, if he's got an obvious tap in, he shouldn't stop it and try and pass it to someone. He should take the goal. But yeah, I think he's worthy and well within his rights to go for that assist. And you're right. I mean, a number of things have changed. I never played as a defender at United as a right back and felt under any expectation whatsoever to get goals or assists. And I look now at some of the achievements of fullbacks and their goals and assists, and I feel embarrassed. But it just wasn't an expectation back then. Assists weren't something that, I mean, I played behind David Beckham and Cristiano Ronaldo, who made assists all the time. And it wasn't really sort of ever, I don't even know in any season that I ever even looked at an assist leaderboard. I don't think it was ever presented to us. And now we get presented with a lot of stats and a lot of data, which is fair. But yeah, it's become something that's a lot more apparent and a lot more in our faces in the last 5, 6 years, 7 years. And is it a good thing? Assists. I do think actually Thierry Henry spoke about assists quite a lot and how important they were, that he felt they were as important as a goal and looking after his teammates. But yeah, historically, strikers were generally more selfish and thought more about goals, solely about goals, not about any way of setting up their teammates, even though I'm sure that they all contribute, because some of them are so basic.
Well, some of them are deflections,
I
aren't
know,
they?
it's like mad. But yeah, so yeah, I'm not wholly bought into it, but I do think that, yeah, to get the 20 assists, you can see the calibre of the player that's up there. It means you're an exceptional player.
Let's move the discussion away from Old Trafford and Manchester United now, because I want to bring up the subject of Chelsea, who have today appointed Xabi Alonso on a 4-year contract. But interestingly, as manager rather than head coach. Do you think that's a sea change that needed to be made?
Yeah, they've basically gone, there you go, Xabi. Have the keys to the club, have the keys to the safe. There's the recruitment room, there's the scouts, there's the medical department, changing room. Simple as that. And the other thing is, if you sack me, by the way, because I lose 4 or 5 matches or 8 matches or 6 matches, you're going to have to pay for it, because I'm literally banking on you. You know, this is his first big job in the Premier League, and I've got to succeed. And I've got to make sure that after what happened at Real Madrid, that I don't get 2 dud jobs on the trot. So I think he's come in, and I think he's probably placed some incredible demands. It looks like a good signing for Chelsea on paper in respect of how Xabi Alonso is thought of. Every manager is a risk. It means that Liverpool aren't signing him, which I think was potentially something that was, mentioned